In this video, I'm going to analyze an incident that happened to me a few days ago with one of my students. This student ended up landing in the sea. In other words, he ditched or water landed. I want to emphasize that the result was not due to the student's mistake. In fact, he did his flight very well and followed the instructions correctly. The cause was probably a combination of a bit of bad luck, because during the summer months the weather in Miraflores is a bit unpredictable, and some mistakes that I attribute to myself as the instructor when making decisions or giving guidance. But the student reacted excellently. He didn't get hurt, not even a scratch, thanks to his quick and correct reactions. He took off with excellent wind. There were many paragliders flying without any problem, but he lost a few meters, caught a wind gradient, and couldn't climb again. Here you can see how he takes off perfectly, then descends a few meters. I tell him to turn right, toward the lighthouse, where the lift is usually stronger. But those few meters he lost made it impossible for him to reach the rising airflow again. And you can see here how, even though he stays close to the cliff to use the wind, instead of going up, he stays level or even starts to descend. At this point, I tell the student over the radio to keep his heading, not to get too close to the cliff because it could be dangerous, and to follow the contour of the slope. Here, the slope gets a little lower, but the wind still hits it well. If there's dynamic lift on this slope, it usually works pretty well. The student stays close to the cliff, but when I see that he isn't gaining altitude, it becomes dangerous for him to keep that distance. He could end up over the road, so I tell him to turn left and go land on the beach. So I tell him to turn and head toward the beach. Now, something important to mention is that this beach is called Punta Roquitas. It's the largest beach in Miraflores where you can land. I usually prefer that the student makes his approach in the middle of the beach, not from the very beginning of it. Let's say this would be the start of the beach. Why? Because in this area, there are some obstacles that could be dangerous. There's a high-voltage cable that goes from the top of the cliff down to the beach. There's a pedestrian bridge, a parking area for cars, and usually a lot of swimmers. So I always try to avoid that zone and have the student make his approach from the middle of the beach instead. Since the beach is very long, it's not necessary to start the approach too early. Under normal conditions, the student begins the approach from the middle and ends up landing safely in this area of Punta Roquitas, which is quite safe, not many people and not many obstacles. Then I tell the student to make big ears.